All right, so we talked a little bit about process definitions, but I said I would show you exactly what that looks like. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to clone one. So the first thing you got to do is you got to publish your forms. So you just click on actions and then publish, and you got to wait for the screen to do its thing. Publish. And then you got to make sure, so that's all 3 evaluation forms. Make sure you are also copying over the self-appraisal because we include that every year, obviously. So make sure you've got that in there. And then publish. And then publish. Okay, so then to do the process definitions, you just click process definition. And if you'll remember, I told you there was no way to clone it, which is frustrating, but what you can do is I actually go up here and I open this in a new tab and I click on edit task definitions. That pulls up my page here, so that's going to help me do what I need to do. You would just do SHRA 2122, click create process definition, and then from there you just have to add each one, but keep in mind you're going to want to edit, you're going to want to pull up to edit the definition so that you can make sure you grab everything. So what you want to do is you want it to look like this when you come back, with the exception of it having the right forms. But to do that, you have to click on it because you have to choose all these various steps. So the first thing we want to, for the new one, add a new task definition. And we want it to be performance plan creation. So it's the plan. Choosing, that's the option that we have there. Performance plan, so sometimes it just populates automatically. We want to use SHRA 2122 because we're in the SHRA form. The person that owns that is going to be the supervisor. So this is one thing we haven't really talked about. The subject is the person that you're reviewing, so that's the employee. The supervisor is the person doing it. And then we have explicit owner and task named owner. Those are ones where you can add different people than what you would typically do. And those work fine if you were doing one review or if you only have like 5 you want to update. But if you do that, I haven't really messed with that a whole lot because it's really global for the whole program. And there's not ever going to be a need for us to be able to update those. That might be something you can talk with people admin about, but it is just not something I've ever tried to navigate on my own because I don't want to have to set those things up. But for example, in our leadership development plan, I did want to have, instead of having the supervisor, this is for our Ridge program, they had to do a proposal. So I didn't want their supervisor to be responsible for doing the plan. I wanted them to be responsible. And then there was a reviewer step that I wanted to go to me and Susan Colby. So I set it up so that we could choose from a list there, and that was, we could choose 2 people, or maybe even more than that, but we had a couple, and so I would specifically name us. The supervisor could see it, but it never went to them to do anything. So at some point, this might be something that you need to know, but probably not, so I'm not going to cover it. I'm not going to stay on it too much, but it is just an option, just so you know what those are there for. So in this case, again, it's the performance plan. We want the supervisor to do it. We don't have any instructions there are no other steps at this point because this begins the process. So we just go in here and we just click create task definition. All right, then we want to add our next one. So our next step, we want to click on actions, edit definition. We're going to use the same, I just copy and paste everything. This is going to be an approval task. So you can see these are all the different types of tasks that you have once you do plan. It has to start with plan, obviously. But second level supervisors approve, employees acknowledge. There are some manual tasks that I will show you how to do. There's a supervisor appraisal, a self-appraisal. The off-cycle or peer feedback is an option that we use, and then multi-raters is not something we use a lot, but it is there. So we want to be choosing, in this case, an approval task. Sorry, we got to choose that first. Second level approval of the plan. And the person that's going to own it is the reviewing officer. So that is the second level supervisor. Okay. So you want to go back. You want to make sure you have all this stuff be the same, and then copy your instructions. And make sure you have the right prerequisite assigned. Obviously, you can't approve the plan. Second level can't approve it until you have created it. So that would be your first step. So click Create Task Definition. And, oh, hold on. I just realized something I missed there. We do need to have it attached to review the plan. So, well, I don't know why it's saying NA there. Oh no, it's supposed to say that. The key thing is you want, because they're not creating the plan, they're just approving it. Sorry. I told you I get confused every time I do this. Every single year I have to go back and relearn this process. So the goal is you just want all of these steps to look the same across. So we'll move to the next one. The next step there is going to be to acknowledge the performance plan. So we're going to choose acknowledge. The name is going to be Employee Acknowledges Performance Plan. Obviously, the default is just going to be something very simple. If you make it just be like very simple thing, it's helpful so that when people are looking at this step in their portal, they know what they're supposed to be doing in that particular step. Otherwise, they're like, what does this mean, plan? What does this mean, appraisal? It's just, if it's just one word. The person owning this, it's the employee. They're gonna acknowledge, so they are the subject of the review. And then you want to, again, select your instructions and just copy them in. And in this case, we have the allow owner to input comments box. So you want to check these boxes too down here as well. We do want to let them put in contact or comments, but we don't want them to send it back. So we don't give them the option to dispute it. So make sure that you uncheck that. Okay. We don't want them to have a return button, and it doesn't conclude the process, but we always do let people put in comments. Okay. You'll create that one. Let me show you, make sure that we did this correctly on this one. We probably did not, because I probably didn't look at it. Okay, so on an approval process, you don't have those boxes down there to check, but it does give you always, just by default. I wasn't sure if it asked you or not, but it gives you the ability to enter comments as the second level approver and to send it back. So you will have a return button. It'll say return and approve for the second level supervisor. So that will automatically show up there. You don't have to change anything with that. Okay. New task definition for the next one is the self-evaluation that comes through in the next process. So we have self-appraisal. We call it self-appraisal. So I don't necessarily need to copy that there, just going through the motions. Then we have our SHRA, hold on, go all the way down. SHRA, self-appraisal, or we're just using one form. So we're using the same form. whereas SHRA and EHRA, they do have slightly different guidelines under the policy, although they're not very different. They don't have those questions at the end about disciplinary actions. So we do have different appraisal forms, but we don't have different self-appraisals. So you're choosing that. We don't have any instructions there. They're on the actual form themselves. Click. Make sure that can't happen until the acknowledgement has happened. And there you go. So new task definition. It's going to be the supervisor appraisal. That comes next after the self-appraisal. It's going to be, there we go. And then SHRA appraisal 2122. We don't have any instructions there. In some cases, we did decide to put instructions, and others we didn't, because there are a lot of instructions on the form, and so they were duplicate instructions, and we just didn't feel like including those in two places. Got confusing. Okay, we got our supervisor appraisal step. Our next step is the second level approval. So new task, approve, second level approval, target document is the appraisal. Person doing this at this point is, again, the reviewing officer, so the second level supervisor. And here is where we say, please make sure that you have checked the math, okay? And select approve if you're happy with the document. All right, and the prerequisite step, I don't think you had to choose. I think it automatically chose one. Yeah, so in some cases it's going to automatically choose your step, because you can't have a supervisor approval step without an appraisal. But just make sure you check that every time, even though I didn't just check it. All right, the next thing you want to do is you want to have your meeting, your appraisal meeting. This is a manual step. So this is a new one that you haven't seen. This is what we call a manual task. And it's just there as kind of a placeholder. So it just tells the supervisor, hey, buddy, you got to make sure that you've met with your person. Don't be asking them to do this unless you have met. Don't be asking them to acknowledge it. Click supervisor, and then make sure that that is checked after this. So again, like I said before, sometimes the prerequisite is checked, sometimes it is not. Create process definition. And then the last step in the process is for the employee to acknowledge their appraisal. So in this case, go to new task definition, acknowledge. Oops, hold on, I put the wrong thing in the box. Bless it. They're doing the appraisal. It's the employee doing it. Again, we let them include comments, but we do not want them to dispute it, because that confuses people. They have a tendency to think that would mean, not that many people need to grieve it, but they do have a tendency to think that if they want to grieve, if they hit that dispute button, something happens, and it doesn't. So we just take that off. all they get is the acknowledge button. And we want to make sure they can't do this until after they've done their appraisal review meeting. So this step won't open for them until then. And it does conclude the process. So you want to click conclude, create task definition, and then you will want to pull them up beside each other. This is much easier to do on a large monitor. And I took my large monitor back to the office, so I'm going to do this when I get back to the office this afternoon. But what I would do is literally just pull them up side by side. Again, easier on a bigger screen. I'd pull them up side by side, and I would just, look and pull them up, open up each one to make sure. The other thing I will say is this last year, I'm not really sure how this happened, but Blair left off the second, or not the second level, but the off-cycle review. So, I just publish, hold on. In here, we have the option for people to do a off-cycle or peer feedback form, and we just call it off-cycle / peer feedback, and they use the form we use is called new off-cycle. I don't think we've updated it. Yep. So it's the new off-cycle, and again, that didn't get included in there. It's included in everyone before it. Again, I am not really sure how it got left off, but it is our way that we allow people to do peer feedback. And so if you don't give that option in the plan, you can't, people won't be able to do it. So let me go show you what that looks like. Let's see, I need to pull from this one. All right, so you see up here, it's complete multi-rater evaluation. Edit definition, off-cycle, peer feedback, new off-cycle, and then a couple things to know about this. I'll talk to you about those instructions in a minute, but make sure that you don't have a prerequisite checked here, because that allows people to only do it if they want to do it. So what this means is when someone gets an email saying you've been selected for an off-cycle review, it means we're asking you to give feedback to somebody besides yourself or someone you supervise. So that can be a peer, or it could be a previous supervisor if someone transfers in and they want to get feedback from their previous supervisor. The employee does not see this, so the person who's the subject of the review does not see it. And then, so it just says you've been selected to provide feedback. Once you've completed this form, your feedback will be available to the supervisor. The feedback will not be available to the employee for whom you are providing it. So there you go. There's that one. And I'm not really sure how that got left off last year, but it did. So, and you'll notice it's up here at the top, and it doesn't have a prerequisite. So that means if people don't do it, it's not going to hold up the process. Okay? So again, I'm going to check this to be 100% sure before I launch it, but I did want to show you the process I go through to actually create it each year, how I add each step, and what each step in the process means. And then when you're done with it, you just publish it, and that's what you're going to use to create your new program, which I will show you here in a little bit.